Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Operations Planning Committee for Thursday, January 14th, 2021, finally to order. Happy New Year, everybody. We're certainly hoping it will be. The first order of business is to approve our meeting minutes of December 16th. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. When ready, I'll entertain a motion to approve or any edits or changes that you see need to be made.
Well, I'll move.
Thanks, Seth.
I will second that.
Thank you, Duke. Are there any corrections or additions to the December 16th minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by waving your hand or saying aye. Aye. Great. Minutes are approved. Terrific. We'll move on to item number 2, discussion of our interesting work of town government. So I will first turn to Chairman of the Board of Education, Duke Dineen.
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year to those of you that I haven't seen or talked to. So look forward to these meetings throughout the rest of the year, hopefully at some point in person, which is good. So I just left a Finance Committee meeting at the Board of Ed. Some updates. We went back to full in-person learning this past Monday for the elementary schools after being a week remote on our first week back in the new year. The middle school and the high school are still in the hybrid model. The goal is, as we continue to look at cases, is to get everyone back in school. But as we all know, this continues to be a fluid situation. And we continue to monitor that. We've had good board conversation, really good parent feedback all the way around about kids being in school and kind of the best place for them to be. But we have to continue to monitor the case. And we also manage staffing, each day at the schools too. The teachers and the staff are impacted. So that's always a consideration. Current cases as of the board meeting packet that I received for the school stand at 45 cases, 74 people quarantined. We've had a cumulative caseload of 152 cases and about 1,150 people quarantined. So again, elementary schools back in full-time, hybrid for Middlesex and high school. We rolled out our budget, had our budget day, which was very productive. I know a lot of people, some on this call participated. Thank you. We went from about 8:30 to 4:30, good conversation. The budget process is moving forward. I know RTM F&B and RTM Education and Board of Finance have their various meetings, and they've submitted a lot of questions to us. We answered a lot of questions. The administration did a great job pulling together information in a few days, and we answered a lot of questions at the Board of Ed meeting Tuesday night, but we continue to get questions and we'll continue to go through that budget process. The budget came in at 3.99% at this point as we go through the process. Kind of an update on COVID expenses. COVID expenses right now stand at $2,384,934. We're looking at some transfers as part of the Finance Committee meeting this morning that would bring that forecast down to about $2,092,000. In working with the Board of Finance and in talking through our appropriation request, we're doing some additional work to actually put together a chart that shows actual expenses that we've paid out and actually what's encumbered. So some of that work is going on right now. So we have all those numbers to lay out as we go through the appropriation request process. The other thing that we're working on that we had a discussion on, and it's moved to a policy discussion, is the high school walk zone radius analysis that was done. So good conversation. Our current walk from the high school prior to busing is 2 miles. There was a lot of good work done by school bus logistics as to what does it look like if we take that to 1.5 miles. which seems to be more the case in our Durgay schools as to what the walk distance is. So that's an ongoing conversation. If we did go to 1.5 miles, that would add 2 buses overall to the busing costs. As I think most people know, we did add a bus last year based on good conversation and parent feedback around the construction and the walk zone over in Norotan Heights. That is something that the superintendent did. So that bus is still in place. So ongoing bus and walk zone conversation to continue. I'll pause there in terms of my update and any questions.
One exciting thing that I notice is that an old tradition in the home school district of walking to school is being continued. I happened to drive by homes at the wrong moment the other day, had to wait in line at the stop sign there at the junction of Middlesex Road and Christie Hill and all of that. And the number of parents and kids walking to homes was very exciting to see.
Thank you, Seth. I think, where people can walk, I think it's always been a walking community. There was a prior superintendent that said he's never seen a community where so many kids walk to and from school, cut through yards, through fields. And, he said it's a nice tradition that the town has around the communities, around the community schools. So.
I appreciate that too. And Duke, as you know, as we look at adding sidewalks and improving sidewalks and pedestrian infrastructure, prioritizing walking student safety continues to be our highest priority, and will also be expressed in our public works budget this year with some sidewalk improvements and recommendations for new sidewalks. With our great desire to have kids have the ability to walk to school comes a great responsibility for people who are in cars. Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's watching this meeting, we had another accident where a young person crossing the road with a bicycle got hit just this past weekend. So people need to be mindful. It's one thing to really appreciate pedestrian safety, but then vehicles need to be aware that people are out walking and biking, and we have to do a little bit more than share the road. We have to encourage that and be mindful and drive slow and be aware, and most of all, don't be distracted when you're driving, because it can be a very, very dangerous situation. So I appreciate your work on that, Duke.
Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, any other questions for Duke regarding the Board of Education? All right, if not, then we will go to Steve Albani for Planning and Zoning.
Thank you, Jamie. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. There's a pause sign on my screen, and I don't know why, but that's okay. As long as you can hear me and maybe see me. Thank you. Welcome. What are we doing at P&Z? We have we have a couple more public hearings coming up on the 7-Eleven project. It was not on the agenda yet this year. It is going to be on our agenda 2 weeks from, I guess, a week from Tuesday. We don't have a meeting this upcoming Tuesday, which is the day after Martin Luther King Day. So it's going to be on January 26th. Where we are in that right now is the town just got in the revised traffic report from the applicant, and I think it should have been sent over to the Legal Traffic Authority, which is basically the police department. Our internal consultant, which is Michael Galante, and the Planning and Zoning Department. It's also on the webpage for the public to view. I personally have not read it myself, but I still have 2 weeks to do it. The application also goes to ZBA on January 20th for their review. They have a couple of things that ZBA has to go through relative to the application. We have upcoming hearings on BMW. BMW has a plan that's really driven by BMW International to renovate their building. We did a zoning change for them about a year ago. And they submitted their information to the Architecture Review Board. They went through it, so they'll be in front of us for some additions and alterations in February. It'll probably be multiple nights. BMW is one of the largest employers in the town of Darien. The Planning and Zoning Department is still monitoring this pending legislation relative to housing in the state of Connecticut. I'm going to leave most of that discussion, if you don't mind, Jamie, to you. I think you're tapped in on a lot of it. The stuff that I do know is, and I've said this a bunch of different times before, there's what we call the Council of Chairs, which is about 7 chairmen of the Planning and Zoning Commissions in our local towns here in southwestern Connecticut. There was a meeting with a number of those chairpersons on Tuesday with, I'm told, 14 legislators in the state of Connecticut. They had a good discussion. I was not at that meeting. It was like 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's our planning and zoning night. I did get some feedback relative to that, and they said it was supposedly was a good meeting. I'm also told that, Jamie, you can fill me in on this. There's a CCM meeting called maybe tonight, and there's some information that's been submitted that I've yet to review yet. That's something that, in my mind, has a huge effect on the town of Darien. So the planning and zoning staff, me as a chairman, some other of our commission members are monitoring that, and it's definitely a work in process, and keep your eyes on it type of thing. The Oxford School is moving forward, as everybody may or may not know. They started demolition, I think, and some of it, all the erosion control stuff was inspected and approved by the planning and zoning staff. They go out there every once in a while. That was done in late January, and they did it again in late December, and done it also in early January. The work is being in the process. It's really site work at this point in time. With regards to just our meetings, once again, this was kind of fun for me. We started the meetings at 7:30 now for Planning and Zoning Commission people. It was at 8 o'clock for years and years and years. So our meetings are now, I want to the public to know that they started 7:30. We try to have them stop in 2.5 hours, which would be 10 o'clock. This week, I was late to my new 7:30 meeting, and we ran past 10 o'clock, so it was still a 3-hour meeting. We're trying, though. We're trying. What else? The other thing that we did this year, at the beginning of the year, I scratched out a list with the Planning and Zoning Department and brought it up at a meeting, our first meeting in January, of what I'm calling 2021 initiatives. There's certain things that we want to do in town to be proactive. One of those, or a couple of those, may or may not be on the legislative agenda for the people up at Hartford. One of them is to look at accessory dwelling units in our town to see if we want to add those. Right now, they are not permitted. We've had a lot of requests for people to be able to put in kitchens and possibly bedrooms in their garage or their pool houses, on larger lots. That's never been permitted in our town. So we're going to review that this year and see where it takes us. We're probably going to mainly focus on larger size lots, being 1 or 2 acres or greater. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do them on the small lots that are, 1/5, 1/3, but we'll see where the discussion goes. So we're going to be proactive on that. The other thing that we're going to look at too is our inclusionary housing zoning. The state mandate is 10%. Darien is now 12%. If we raise that to a different number, say somewhere between 13 and 15%, at the end of the day, it doesn't really move the dial, but we might pick up a couple of units here and there. I spoke at one of our last meetings. The Boston Post Road project that's on the corner of Dickerson and Boston Post Road, which is the old International Tile. That's a new project that John Vaccaro's building. It's about 5 or 6 units. We have one affordable unit in there. Based upon the math, the one unit comprises 20% of the building. So if our regulation was 15% and they still get one unit, you'd still only get one unit. And that's something that's good for the town. We do want to continue to diversify our housing. Other projects that are still moving forward is the Old Darien Playhouse, that's under construction. Hopefully they get the thing done, most of it done by the summertime. I don't think the retail space is going to be ready, but either the retail or the apartments are going to be ready there. That's another great addition to our downtown. That's going to have 4 apartments and 4 retail stores, and one of them is going to be Kennedy's Barbershop, which is moving around the corner. I think that's basically it. Jimmy, if you want to talk about the CCM stuff, you're welcome. You know more about that than I do, I think. But any questions, I'm open for them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So at this moment, there are several different agencies that are working through what their legislative proposals will be, what they're planning to support or not support. So CCM is one of those organizations. The Council of Small Towns and WestCog itself have all debated this issue of affordable housing and statewide changes to zoning. There were some bills that were in draft form already in the fall. I believe that those bills will be put forward. Not sure if they will be modified by the time they're put forward, but each of those agencies that I mentioned is prepared to support certain aspects of the proposals that have been offered by the Desegregate Connecticut organization that's headed by Sarah Bronin, the wife of the mayor of Hartford, Luke Bronin. I've tried to participate in the meetings that CCM has. I'm on the working group for CCM. I'm on the working group for cost for these housing issues. And they're hotly debated. And I think at the bottom line for, I would say, most of the towns like ours, both in southwestern Connecticut and beyond, is that, like so many pieces of legislation, one size does not fit all. And every town has unique conditions, whether they're environmental, whether they, folks don't have commercial or transit-oriented development areas within their communities. I think everybody acknowledges that there's a need to develop housing that is more affordable. So I think there's bits and pieces that will move forward. There's things that will be added to that agenda. For example, Steve, you probably should feel good about this, that when we talk about inclusionary zoning on all of these meetings, which was not in the Desegregate Connecticut agenda, but hopefully will be put forward as a proposal for other towns to consider building a toolbox for everyone to help develop more housing. As we know more about the specific legislation on that's going to be proposed, we'll make sure we get that information out, because it isn't without its impacts. Steve and I have been talking about the impacts of, what exactly does it look like for the town of Darien to have a quarter mile of commercial centers and within a half mile of transit centers having multifamily housing as of right. That means without a public hearing. And so we've mapped that. We know what that looks like, and certainly that would be a big change for those single family neighborhoods that are within those concentric circles. And I think it's really important, and our job will be to educate the folks of Darien so that they know what changes may be coming. And I do appreciate that Planning and Zoning Commission is taking the time to look at the things that are on that agenda for what makes sense for our community. There might be some things that do make sense. You mentioned accessory dwelling units. It may not work in every zone, but it certainly could work in some zones. And that would be great for us to, proactively look at what we can do to enhance our ability to diversify our housing stock. That really is, for me, it's, I like to use that phraseology. We want housing diversity so that we can have population diversity. That's very healthy for a community. And that will include affordable housing. But we've done a great job, and I like to continue to share that with people beyond our borders, that Darien has actually done, if they take a look, a really great job over the last 10 years developing more affordable housing and housing choice. So certainly a lot to keep you posted on. Yes, Steve.
I do want to tell you one thing that I don't it's on that list. Just so you know, one of the items that I think was on that list was education for commission members.
Yep.
Jeremy Ginsburg, our planning and zoning director, and to me that's a budget line item. He has already signed up the commissioners to take an 8-hour online course on Saturday, March 6th. It's $40 per commissioner times 6 commissioners, so it's $240 in total expenditures. Jeremy said that's already in our budget. So in terms of continuing education, which is one of the items I think on that list, Darien, I took classes before. We've had classes in Darien before. Of the 8-hour course that's offered on that Saturday, March 6th, I think 3 of them are for different people like ARB people and ZBA people. So our commissioners are signed up for that class. So we're already ahead of that if that was one of the items that they really wanted us to do.
It is, and I'm sure they're going to want certain elements in that education, and fair housing is one of them. So that's great. I think that's an easy one. You know, there's others that are more controversial.
I
did take that fair housing class, just so you know, as a matter of course. But I did ask shut up my phone. Sorry about that. There we go. I did ask Jeremy if he could coordinate through one of my continuing education resources here in Connecticut to have a class in Darien. So instead of us going to Hamden and taking a class that's sponsored by, you know, another organization or sometimes by UConn, to have our teacher come to Darien. Usually the class size has to be like 20 people. We already have 6 or 8 in our town that would take those classes. And if Jeremy invited people from New Canaan, Greenwich, neighboring towns, I'm sure we can get it up earlier. So instead of even us traveling, we can have them come to us, which is what I do for my continuing education. But that's to be figured out.
I would think our new virtual world makes that all moot. I would certainly hope that any required education can be provided by online classes. So
right.
I know that we've talked about that in some of those forums I mentioned. Seth, did you have a question?
Yes. Just looking at the plan and how it's executed, how it's laid out is something that has to be done, in my view, very carefully, coming from District 3. But looking just down the train line, you've got Rowayton, Darien, Norotan Heights, and Glenbrook. And then if you start expanding out a half a mile from that, you're taking in a lot of territory. The
actually 33% of the town, Seth, to be exact.
Thank you.
Yep.
I didn't have that. I knew you would. So it's a big deal.
We're on top of that.
And the other, I mean, setting aside for a moment the impact on the town of Darien, there is an impact on the state as well. The tax revenue base in the state, excuse me for that. The tax revenue for the state of Connecticut is driven off of real estate. So how, and most of that revenue comes from Fairfield County. So how this all gets implemented is a delicate issue on 2 fronts. And I just want to kind of put that out there to everybody.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for Steve? No? Then let's move on to the Board of Finance. Frank, thank you for joining.
Hi, it's nice to be here. You know, we skipped the December meeting and we're just getting going on our budget work. I want to thank, by the way, Duke and the school administration. This question effort that Duke mentioned has been fantastic this year. Questions treated very seriously and completely, so it's terrific.
Thanks, Frank.
I expect, and it's just me, maybe I'm wrong, but there'll be probably a little more than normal zigs and zags toward the end of this process this year as we all sort of settle into what we think the next year will bring. It's going to take a little more time than usual to get there. Other than that, I really, we're very interested in what everybody has to say. And, you know, the more warning we can get of adjustments, the better. That's.
Thank you. We all look forward to working with the Board of Finance this year, Frank. Any questions for Frank and the Board of Finance? No? Then we'll move to Seth.
Thank you.
RTM.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's I still miss not sitting around the table with everybody. And to be honest, I sort of miss 100 friendly faces from time to time of the RTM, but that's where we are these days. Just to bring you up to date, we did have a special meeting of the RTM on the December 28th to reauthorize the tax deferment plan under the governor's 9R proclamation. We had to do that by December 30, and we did, and so that continues. Moving forward, we will have a meeting here on the 25th. We'll have presentations from Jessica Vonacek, who's the Chief of Economic and Community Development for the City of Norwalk. We've been trying to make this a regular occurrence so that coming on the heels of the State of the Town meeting, which talks about Darien, we get a picture of what's going on the towns around us. I was not able to get Tom Madden from Stamford for our 25th meeting, but he will come in February. He's available then, so we'll get him then. Also, we're asked David Knopf if he would give us an update on COVID-19 and vaccinations and all of that. In addition, we'll add Craig Jung to the 5 Mile River Commission and approve a submission, which I think has already been made, of $162,000 for state reimbursement of COVID-19 expenses. So things roll along. The technology committee of the rules committee continues its work to help us stay abreast of changes in technology. We've been working a lot with Kate. Kate has been terrific. Thank you, Kate, for all the work you've done to help our meetings run smoothly. When you've got 100 people on one of these softwares, it's quite an experience, let me assure you. Making sure you don't leave someone out or someone doesn't get hurt, and that you follow the procedures outlined by the governor. Actually has a say in this. So they continue to do great work in helping us stay abreast of what's going on from a technology standpoint. I would give you one other thing just on COVID-19 vaccinations, just an observation. I saw on the front page of the Stamford Advocate yesterday that Stamford has started vaccinating people over 65. And since it wasn't clear who might be included, I went ahead and put my name in. We'll see what happens. And I'll offer you another thing. I happened to see a doctor at the Columbia Presbyterian Hospital from time to time, so I'm on their list. So they sent me an email and said, "Hey, come on down and get vaccinated." So I throw all of that excitement out to you. I'm going to explore all my options. The sooner the better, I think. So that's where we are. That's where we're going. And we get better and better, I think, using GoToMeeting as our venue. Our attendance for RTM meetings is way up. So I don't know whether that's a plus or a minus, but I still think that a lot goes on in in-person meetings that is lost here, but it certainly is efficient. And Kate's developed a use of the polling software so that it makes the voting a lot quicker. So for that, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Seth for the RTM? Great, thanks, Seth. We'll look forward to hear what's going on in Norwalk and Stamford. Okay, I'll turn to my report. Always lots to report. We'll certainly start with COVID. I'm sure that you're all likely very aware that there has been a great spike in the cases of COVID between Thanksgiving and now. Part of that is due to the increased transmission. The new strain of the virus, the UK/South African strain of the virus, is here in Connecticut. The public health department doesn't know exactly how pervasive the new strain is because they're only doing sample testing. They have to genetically code the virus to be able to tell which strain it is. But it is here, and the instructions that we received were that if you test positive now, you should assume that you have the new variant, and therefore take your quarantine rules and your mask wearing rules very seriously. It is highly transmissible. I think one of the other reasons why we're seeing a great spike in cases is we have a tremendous amount of testing going on. And the one thing I want to share for the public's consumption right now, we keep getting emails from people who are very dissatisfied that the town of Darien has chosen a testing provider that has a fee associated with it. And I want to be very clear about our decision to provide testing at all. There has never been a mandate that all cities and towns have within their municipality COVID testing. The state has not helped to facilitate COVID testing for municipalities like ours. There's been a focus on providing testing in cities and communities that are underserved. Those communities, some around us that include Norwalk and Stamford, have gotten the support and subsidy from the state of Connecticut to provide testing that's quote unquote free. That is not the case for towns like Darien. For us to have testing available locally, there are very few providers, and the provider that we have chosen, EverPoint Health, charges an upfront fee to cover their lab and admin costs. Of course, anyone in the town of Darien is welcome and encouraged to use testing services in other municipalities that are free if they need that and if they want that. But we felt it was important to have a local testing provider here for the convenience of our residents. And it's very, very well used. I understand that you can submit those charges to your insurance company. Many insurance companies are reimbursing the cost of testing. There may be one that is a little bit more reluctant to do that. But along with that, we continue to look at the possibility of other providers who may be able to provide a great service at lesser cost. But we have yet to be able to find one of those. Looking to our north, New Canaan uses two different services. They use a service called Physician One, who does event testing. And that requires the town to financially commit to paying for 400 to 500 tests up front, and then they fill out the schedule to try and get that many people to come and take the tests. But the town is on the hook for the cost of those tests, and those tests cost $90. The town has initially subsidized that cost for their residents. I don't believe they're any longer subsidizing that cost, so residents in New Canaan will pay $90 if they use the Physician One event testing. and it only happens from time to time. It's not available every day. Waveney Care Center is another testing provider in New Canaan that has entered into an agreement with the town of New Canaan to test for New Canaan residents only. And again, that is being subsidized by the town of New Canaan, $3,000 a week for the testing that Waveney Care Center is providing. Our local health director is looking at the services of Waveney Care Center. We are considering entering into a relationship with Waveney Care Services for vaccinations. So we'll learn more about that to see if there's a testing and vaccination opportunity for the town of Darien. So I really want to clarify that we've tried to provide a testing provider service for the convenience of Darien residents. You're not at all committed to using that service if you don't want to absorb the $200 upfront out-of-pocket cost. You can go to the community health centers in Stamford and Norwalk. And I'm not sure if they have scheduling or if you go wait in line over at Terry Connor's Rink in Stamford, they have one, and you just go queue up and you can be tested and there's no cost for that. So there are many different options. In addition to going on the 211.org service, you can find all of the testing providers throughout the state of Connecticut and choose whatever provider makes sense for you. So COVID information, and thank you for your update on what's happening at the Board of Education. Town-wide, we certainly have seen an increase in COVID cases. We have approximately, and I say that because new reports will be coming out today, of course, about 853 aggregate cases in the town of Darien, about 26 hospitalizations. We've had a few more hospitalizations in November, December, and early January. And sadly, we've had a few additional deaths, 3 additional deaths since November. So we stand at 8 deaths in total. And that's always very, very difficult, to have members of our community that paid the ultimate price of this terrible virus. We will get another weekly update today posted on the town website. This week has been a challenging COVID information week. The state's server was down on Monday and Tuesday. And to have the state's server down on Monday is difficult because you have a backlog of cases from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So yesterday we had to report 58 cases over a 6-day period. But again, a lot of people are getting tested. That's a very good thing. So we're identifying a lot of those asymptomatic cases, which helps to facilitate quarantining. And we are seeing that children are mostly are asymptomatic positive cases. So being diligent about quarantines, again, is very, very important to help stop the spread. Regarding vaccines, we are at the tail end of phase 1A. The state has a 3-phase plan, 1A, 1B, and 2. Not sure how they came up with that, but we're at the tail end of 1A, which provided vaccines to healthcare workers, residents of long-term care facilities, and medical first responders. Phase 1B begins on Monday, although they've opened up the portal yesterday to allow folks 75 and over to be able to register to get their vaccines. Phase 1B will include frontline essential workers, which will have a specific definition that will be put out by the state's vaccine committee sometime today. It will also include, I think they're going to expand in accordance with the CDC's recommendation, to folks between 65 and 74. The news on the governor's phone call last night is it's obvious that folks 65 and over have had the most severe negative outcomes of contracting the coronavirus. So I'm really pleased that there's going to be a focus on getting folks 65 and over vaccinated. Folks also included in 1B will be individuals between the ages of 16 and 64 that have a comorbidity. Again, those folks are at great risk for having severely negative outcomes from the virus. The local health department will be a vaccine provider. Our local health director has applied to receive vaccine distribution. As soon as we are notified that we will be receiving vaccine, he has planned clinics that will take place here in the gymnasium at Town Hall. We have not received a positive response yet on the receipt of vaccine. Just to give you an indication of the challenge, the state of Connecticut receives 44,000 doses of vaccine each week. In phase 1B alone, there are over 1 million people that qualify for phase 1B. So 1B is going to be a very prolonged phase of vaccine delivery until supplies can be ramped up from the different providers. I was really happy to hear this morning on the news that Johnson & Johnson is close to approval for a single dose vaccine. Folks may be wondering, okay, so I got my first dose, am I guaranteed to get my second dose? I know that's a worry for many. I was also very pleased to hear last night that when an individual receives their first dose of vaccine in Connecticut, the second dose is immediately reserved at the manufacturer in the supply chain. So I think there is virtually no risk of anyone not receiving their needed second dose of the vaccine, which is great news. Moving on from vaccines, but I certainly welcome any of your questions at the end of my report. The federal administration has approved a major disaster declaration for all 8 counties in the state of Connecticut for Storm Isaias. It helps us a little bit. We had $40,000 in expenditures, and we will be applying for our hopefully easy to approve 75% reimbursement for that expenditure. Nothing is ever a guarantee with FEMA. One thing I've learned over my tenure here is FEMA funding is really hard to receive, so we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. As indicated, we're moving into the budget process. I look forward to, again, a very open, transparent, and collaborative budget process with RTM members, the Board of Finance, and anyone else who wants to participate and give input to the Board of Selectmen throughout that process. We'll receive the town administrator's budget on January 25th, and then we're off to the races. We should take our final vote at the latest by February 9th, and then we move our budget to the Board of Finance on the 3rd of March with a planned townwide budget vote for May 11th. I fully anticipate that the town budget vote will be virtual, and I'm pleased that we've figured out how to do that in as streamlined a manner as we can to keep everybody engaged. I listen to the conversations of my colleagues across the state who really struggle, and especially those who have a traditional town meeting where folks come out and actually vote. They don't have a representative town meeting, and they're really struggling, and it sounds like folks like that might be going to the absentee ballot kind of system for their budget approvals this year. So I'm really glad that with the assistance of Kate and the folks at TV 79, Cecil Wade, Mike Wheeler, Jim Cameron, and folks in the RTM, that we have a pretty good process in place. Moving to the legislature on Terry's behalf, she's not here today. Bills are in the process of being developed and submitted right now. So we don't really know what all the proposals are going to be. But from my work with CCM, Cost, and Westcog, what I know will be coming will be bills associated with the regional delivery of services, which services we don't actually know yet. But the intent is to activate the councils of governments to be regional centers of government service delivery. So we're going to see bills about that this year. You're going to see bills to support online gaming, sports betting, and you're going to see bills about the commercialization of marijuana. We've already discussed that you'll see legislation about statewide housing and zoning changes in an effort to desegregate the state of Connecticut. And you're also going to see bills that address revenue diversification to try and chip away at the over-reliance on local property tax. What that exactly means, I don't know yet. I think it's going to allow for additional fees to be charged, perhaps a local sales tax, perhaps an increase in the income tax, all yet to be determined, but that will be a high priority issue this year. And an issue that is really important to all of us and all chief elected officials across the state of Connecticut is a dedication of time, attention, and financial resources to the build out of reliable and sustainable broadband services. Our new work from home and learn from home model requires that Connecticut become hopefully a leader in broadband. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's not a regulated industry. So I know that Governor Lamont is very dedicated to that initiative. So I'm looking forward to hearing those conversations. I want to thank Duke again for the great collaboration. We talk often, which is terrific, about areas of mutual interest. One area of mutual interest for me and for I think the district too is how to enhance public communication. So you might hear some things about that in the Board of Selectmen budget coming forward. And to the extent that there's a way for the town to collaborate with the Board of Education, I welcome the opportunity, and I've spoken with Duke and Dr. Adley about this. I'm not sure there will be, but we're going to make a best effort to see if there's a collaboration that can be forged regarding that. And we've had good conversations too with the new director of the Darien Library, Kira Perot. She came in and met with Kate and Jen to lay the groundwork for what I think is going to be a great ongoing relationship with the Darien Library. So with that, I'll stop, but I certainly will answer any of the questions that you have on these topics or others. Steve.
Thank you. I think my mic is on.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yeah.
One was, I said earlier about the planning and zoning initiatives for 2021. I think you and I talked about this last year relative to 5G. Do you want me to put that on my list?
You should put that on your list, and I would like to reconnect you with the folks at WestCog who have come up with a draft ordinance for cities and towns in WestCog on that issue of 5G deployment and what the zoning planning implications will be. There's certainly an aesthetic component to the deployment of 5G that we all need to be mindful of. So yes, let's put that on the Planning and Zoning Commission list, and I'll reconnect you.
Okay, is 5G and broadband, what you just spoke about, is that one and the same, or is that two different items?
Two different items. 5G is wireless service, and broadband is internet connectivity for using your computer and cable services.
But that's not going to affect P&Z because that's mostly already on existing cables, I'm guessing.
At the moment, I don't think it's a planning and zoning issue, but never say never.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Then the other quick item is, and I don't know if you heard or the finance heard or education heard, I heard that there was this speech that Senator Anwar gave, and relative to this housing initiative, there was a concept or an idea to tie affordable housing to town funding or state funding. So if you don't do what they say, they're going to pull your funding for schools or towns. Is that true?
Yes, I have heard that. I think the basic thought process in Hartford is that they've tried to create incentives for cities and towns to further develop affordable housing, but they're done with the incentives and now it's going to be sticks. And that's one of them. We don't know yet. It's too soon to tell whether that kind of a punitive action will make its way into the legislation or not. I'm sure that will be hotly contested.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have questions? Yes, Seth.
Just, you mentioned the long-term funding of the state and how it's all going to work and how they're trying to deal with it. And as I recall, when Weicker came in with the state income tax, he said, well, look, we've got to have this income tax to smooth the tax revenues. They jump around too much if we rely completely on real estate taxes. So we need to have the income tax to help smooth things out, and that's really going to be the solution. But it hasn't been, and it hasn't been because of the way that the state has been managed, the way it's managed its debt, its pension funds, and I just put that on the table. I don't have a solution here, but I think everybody should realize that we're headed for some more state raising of revenues because we're in deep trouble financially. You've got a lot of people unemployed and they drive revenue into the state, and you've got debt that's built up over a long period of time, whether you consider the pension fund debt or not. And so there needs to be some addressing of that. And I'm sitting here bringing coal to Newcastle here, Jamie, because you're there. I'm sure it's been frustrating for you, but it's an issue. And I guess, Frank, you probably see that as well. I just wanted to put that on the table. There needs to be a change, and I wish I knew how it's to make it happen.
So thank you, Seth. I think that certainly has been a sentiment that that many of us have felt for a long time. But we're in a new period right now. We have a new federal administration that will likely result in additional support to states like Connecticut. I think there's likely going to be a repeal of the cap on the SALT deductions. So there might be some very positive effects for the state of Connecticut. The challenges continue to exist in our urban centers in Connecticut. And, I agree with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, quite frankly, that a state can't be successful without successful urban centers. But that's a twofold calculus, right? We have to have sound financial planning in those centers, and we also have to be looking at how to grow our economy and grow our higher paying wage jobs in the state of Connecticut. So it isn't one thing or another. It all has to work in good concert with one another. But I do think that we're in a new time, and I think I'll be very interested to see how Connecticut fares with some additional support from the federal government, and if that can help us begin to right the fiscal ship. Anybody else have any questions for me this morning? Okay, if not, then I think that is the end of our OPC meeting for today. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Seth. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Duke. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Great.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great morning.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.